Oh, Nintendo. Just as I start to feel warm and fuzzy towards you and think that things are starting to look up, you go and pull another one out of the hat. And what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about Nintendo partnering with SanDisk to bring us Nintendo branded micro SD cards. And you might be wondering, why is that an issue? Well, in and of itself, it's no issue at all. However, with this story, we're also hearing that some games moving forward are going to require the Switch to have a micro SD card installed in order for those games to run. Yep, you heard me right. Whether the game is on cartridge or whether the game is downloaded from the eStore, you are going to need a micro SD card installed into the Switch for the game to be able to work. And this harks back to stuff I've been banging on about for months now, even before the Switch was released. I keep going on, and I probably will continue to keep going on about its lack of storage. At 32 gig, it seemed to me when it was announced that it was way below capacity for a modern device, especially one that was marketed in part as a home console. And, I understood that it was necessary to use solid state storage for a device that was also a portable. So as a hybrid, it needed to use solid state storage. I understood that. I also understood that they needed to keep the capacity down in order to keep the price down. And of course, Nintendo always want to keep the price down because they want to make a profit on the hardware. Nevertheless, I did think it might come back to bite them in the arse. Or more importantly, I thought it might come back to bite their fans on the arse. And here we are. But even in April, I made a video and I talked about this problem. And we looked at Lego City Undercover, and it seemed that Lego City Undercover was going to need a download patch that exceeded the Switch's internal storage capacity. As it turned out, at the time, the size of the patch had been misreported, and Lego City Undercover didn't require additional storage, or at least not a significant amount of additional storage. But I also stated that it was pretty likely that we would be seeing larger patches for games in the future, and that this would require the purchase of a large capacity micro SD card, or even cards. Now, even back then and subsequently, I've had arguments with people who are trying to make excuses for this lack of storage, and they're even trying to justify it by saying that the Switch doesn't need the extra capacity because the games come on cartridges. Oh, magic cartridges, it seems. But those arguments fail to address the very real problems that are inevitable when you need day one patches or DLC and so on and so forth. Not to mention the issues for people who prefer digital downloads. And let's be honest, an awful lot of people these days prefer digital downloads. Fast forward to this week. And as I said before, we're now hearing that lo and behold, some games are going to require an online connection and an SD card in order to run. Now, the online connection, as far as I can tell, is only going to be needed in order to download the day one patch. But you are going to need an SD card. In an article for IGN, Jonathan Dornbush stated, Nintendo has also revealed that moving forward, some Nintendo Switch games will require a micro SD card in order to experience the full content of certain upcoming games. In an announcement, Nintendo noted that, and he quotes, a micro SD card will be needed for certain Nintendo Switch games that contain an especially large amount of content and require additional storage for players to enjoy the full experience. And then he goes on to add, at least one upcoming release, NBA 2K18, will be such a game requiring a micro SD card in the system, as evidenced by the game's updated box art. Now, far be it for me to say I told you so, but I told you so. The Switch is selling pretty well, especially in Japan, where it appears to be selling even faster than the PS4 did at launch. But some issues relating to online chat and potential issues with build quality are just not going away. And this lack of capacity is another one of those issues. And for me at least, it's potentially the biggest issue of all. As games get bigger The downloads they require for Switch are going to get bigger too. You can buy all your games on cartridge and lug them around with you as much as you like, in a case or however you want to transport them. But that won't stop the need for you to purchase a large capacity SD card, which will only add to the cost of the console. When the console first launched, it could have been argued that you didn't need an SD card. And, to be fair, that would have been an almost reasonable argument, for the short term at least. But moving forward, and with this additional information we've got now, that argument just won't stack up. And ironically, this will only get worse if the Switch continues to sell in large numbers, because game companies want their games on as many systems as possible, especially if those consoles have a large install base. And, the Switch looks like it may well get a large install base, especially in Japan. Now, I've argued against there being much third-party support for the Switch, and, I still think there will be a problem with third-party support on the Switch. But nevertheless, some companies will begin to look at the Switch more favourably as its sales increase. That means more third-party support, more games, and more large patches. And then there's DLC, season passes, and so on and so forth. That's just the reality of a lot of modern games, whether we like it or not. And it's not going to change just because those games are on the Switch. You can't shoehorn things into a capacity that just isn't there. The Switch isn't the bloody TARDIS. And all this is going to result in more expense for the gamer, both in terms of initial outlay when you buy the Switch and moving forward. I can see that as things go on, people are going to go and buy the Switch and they're going to have to buy a micro SD card day one in order to buy the games they want to play. And let's be honest, micro SD cards aren't cheap. And so the Switch is going to look very expensive unless Nintendo perhaps can reduce the price of the console. I don't know. Dornbush went on to add, Nintendo is making sure not to blindside players who purchase games that need extra storage though. A representative for Nintendo of America confirmed that box art like that for NBA above will have notices of this memory card requirement on the front and back of the packaging. And for those downloading on the eShop, there will be the standard information noting how large the game is. Nintendo also clarified that games requiring the additional space of a memory card will still allow those without a micro SD card to play portions of those games. Well, that's all right then. Stating on the box that an internet download and a micro SD card are required is all very well, but how many people will actually read that? Or, even understand it if they're not a gamer? Let's be honest, a lot of people buying the Switch will be buying it for their kids or their grandkids and so on and so forth. Just imagine going into a shop, purchasing the Switch and NBA 2K18, getting home and only then realising that it needs an SD card. Or even worse, imagine you bought it for your son or daughter for Christmas and they're all excited to play it on Christmas Day, only to find that they can't play the game because you didn't buy an SD card. They're going to go from thinking you're the best parent in the world to being rather upset. Oh, of course, my mistake. Nintendo have said people can play portions of the game without an SD card. Yeah, right. Because we all know how much of a game we get to play before the patch is downloaded, don't we? Not bloody much. And look, okay, I know it's a fairly trivial point in the grand scheme of things, but nevertheless, it does highlight an issue that many have repeatedly refused to accept despite the mounting evidence. I even got called a hater for suggesting that it was an issue by people who clearly have the insight of a hedgehog. And no, that's not a reference to Sega, though frankly it could have been. Just wait, we'll be hearing about 2TB micro SD cards in the comments, despite the fact they're not even available yet. And let's be honest, when they are available, they're going to cost an arm and a leg. Better start saving, guys, because you're going to need a new mortgage. Nintendo must have known this was a problem for their console from the very beginning. And now they're cashing in by doing a marketing deal with SanDisk. It's good business, I suppose. But why not include an SD card with the console, now that we know that we're going to need one? Surely it's not going to cost them that much to put one in the console, in the box. Oh yeah, that would hit their bottom line. While, of course, leaving it out of the box increases their profit margins, especially if they're doing a deal with SanDisk, which they get a cut from. Is it me, or a Nintendo looking more and more cynical with each and every announcement they make? Seriously? I don't know. They keep doing stuff like this, don't they? They keep pulling it. But anyway, that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments. And while I'm waiting for that, I'll go and get myself a cup of tea. And I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.